Indeed, in the early 90s, we saw the abortion of a democratic experiment in Tunisia, followed by an abortion of an experiment toward democratization in Algeria.
With the support of democracies.
With the support of the major liberal democracies of the world, France in particular. Now that phase you've just spoken about, which started with India taking the lead in the building of democratic institutions, that's the phase in your forthcoming book, The Life and Death of Democracy, you refer to as the last phase of the life of democracy. Now, earlier you speak about two phases. The very first phase is the one that you trace not as people usually do in Greece, but elsewhere.
Perhaps I can tell you about this. I mean, there are various ways of thinking about the whole history of democratic institutions as we have come to know them and as people knew them in the past. Broadly, I think, and it's of course an arbitrary way of categorizing, but it's one that I find very fruitful. Broadly speaking, there have been three phases in the history of democratic institutions. The first is assembly-based democracy. The second is representative democracy. And I think, beginning with India, which, as I've said already, should be credited with its path-breaking experiment in constitutional power sharing, I think in India we have seen the birth of what I want to call complex democracy. Three phases: assembly, representative, complex democracy. The scandal that I hope to, minor scandal anyway, to generate in my book, is that the custom and convention has been that assembly-based democracy, direct democracy, so-called, began in Athens. Or some have made the amendment to say that it began at least in other Greek democracy city-states, of which there were something like 200, and about which we know very little until, have known very little until recently, because of the predominance of Athens as an imperial power in classical Greece. The scandal is that the language of democracy, demokratia, is much older than classical Greek.
It sounds very Arabic, demokratia.
It is certainly a word that is traceable to Linear B, to the language of the Mycenaean civilization. That means approximately 1500 BCE. And root words like damu, referring to a body of people who seek to gain power, to exercise power. That word is certainly Sumerian, and that takes it back into the world of ancient Mesopotamia, where one can say assemblies were born. The assembly, a meeting of people who consider each other equals, who come together to decide how they want to live on the face of the earth, who will get what, when, and how. This is not a Greek invention. It is not a European invention. It's not a Western invention. It is actually an invention of the East, of what is today Iraq and Iran. It was in ancient Mesopotamia, beginning 2,500 years BCE, that assemblies were first born. Kings were elected. Commoners attended these assemblies. For example, in matters of law, of theft of property, of violence against others, assemblies were convened to decide what justice would be meted out. And these assemblies were transported partly to the east, in what is today Pakistan and Western India, and they were transported to the west through the Phoenicians, through city-states like Byblos, for instance, and then into the Greek world, which claimed these assemblies as their own creation and as a sign of their superiority over the barbarians of the East. So this is a story that I want to tell, and it has to be part of the history of democracy that it, so to say, all began in the East.